And now, with the weight of betrayal shed and the dust of the Jedi Temple behind her, Ahsoka Tano stepped onto a new path. A path not defined by an ancient code or the rigid structure of an order, but by the raw, unvarnished realities of a galaxy she had only ever seen from the polished halls of power. This was her true education, a transition from Padawan to independent guardian. Her journey began in the most unlikely of places, the underbelly of Coruscant, far from the Jedi Temple spires she once called home. Here, she encountered the Martez sisters, Trace and Rafa. For the first time, Ahsoka was confronted not with political machinations or intergalactic war, but with the struggles of ordinary people. She saw firsthand the desperation that drove them, the difficult choices they were forced to make simply to survive. Her Jedi upbringing had taught her to help the needy, but it had never prepared her for the sheer scale of the galaxy's suffering, a suffering often ignored by the very institution she had served. With the Martez sisters, Ahsoka's perspective began to shift dramatically. The galaxy was not a chessboard for Jedi and Sith, but a mosaic of individuals, each with their own story, their own dreams, their own battles. She learned about the black markets, the smuggling rings, the seedy underpinnings of society that the Jedi, in their grand war, had overlooked. She saw that not all who broke the law were evil, some were simply trying to get by. And in this new context, her understanding of the Force began to evolve as well. The Jedi had taught her that the Force was an elegant energy field, a tool to be wielded in their fight for justice. They taught her to feel it in grand gestures, in the humming of a kyber crystal or the push of an enemy. But away from the Jedi, Ahsoka began to sense the Force in the subtle hum of a speeder bike engine, in the desperate hope in Trace's eyes, in the quiet determination of Rafa. It wasn't just a Jedi's power, it was the lifeblood of the galaxy, connecting every being, from the humblest citizen to the most powerful Jedi Master. She realized that the Force was not something to be contained and controlled by an order, but an innate part of all life, a living, breathing river of energy that flowed freely, untouched by dogma. This new, broader understanding gave her a moral autonomy that diverged sharply from traditional Jedi teachings. A Jedi might have refused to deal with smugglers or engage in risky, semi-legal operations. But when the Martez sisters found themselves in a bind with the notorious Pike Syndicate, Ahsoka didn't hesitate. She knew that the Jedi's rigid rules would have left them to fend for themselves. Her new moral compass, however, was guided by compassion and a personal sense of justice. She was willing to bend the rules, to step into the gray, to do what was necessary to protect the innocent. This newfound freedom also manifested in her actions. When Trace, overwhelmed by fear, jettisoned their cargo, a Jedi might have seen it as a disastrous failure and a moment of weakness. But Ahsoka, having walked in their shoes, understood the impulse. She showed patience and empathy, not judgment. She was no longer bound by the Jedi's stringent expectations of perfection. She was free to be a person, not just a symbol. In her time with the Martez sisters, Ahsoka Tano didn't just survive, she transformed. She shed the last vestiges of her Padawan identity and forged her own path, one defined not by ancient codes, but by her own unwavering sense of right and wrong. It was a path that led her away from the Jedi, but ultimately toward her destiny as a true hero, a legend in her own right, unbound by dogma and more formidable than ever before. And so, we arrive at the final heart-wrenching chapter of Ahsoka's transformation. The crescendo of a galaxy-spanning conflict that would not only define her future but shatter the very foundations of her past. This is a story of reunion, of impossible choices, and of the profound emotional fallout that would forge a hero beyond the Jedi. The Siege of Mandalore. The name itself is a somber echo of the Clone Wars' last desperate moments. It was the final battle of a conflict that had consumed a galaxy, a prelude to the galactic cataclysm that was about to unfold. For Ahsoka, however, this wasn't just another strategic objective. This was a personal crusade. Teaming up with the formidable Bo-Katan Kryze, she set out to liberate Mandalore from the clutches of the vengeful Darth Maul. But the true weight of this campaign lay not in its military objective, but in the emotional crucible it represented. For here, on the cusp of war's end, Ahsoka was reunited with her master, Anakin Skywalker. Theirs was a fleeting, bittersweet reunion. On the war-torn streets of a besieged city, they were, for a brief and precious moment, master and Padawan once more. Anakin presented her with a gift, a pair of lightsabers. Their twin blades a brilliant blue, a symbol of their shared history and a testament to their enduring bond. For a moment, the years of distance and disillusionment seemed to melt away. She saw the maturity and weariness in him. He saw the independence and strength she had gained. But their time was short. Anakin was summoned back to Coruscant by the Jedi Council to rescue Chancellor Palpatine. He left, a final goodbye, unaware of the impending doom that would sever their bond forever. He left her with the 5 Wars Legion and with the fate of the Republic, and indeed the galaxy, hanging by a thread. Amidst the ferocious battle to capture Darth Maul, Ahsoka faced a trial of a different kind. From the captured Sith Lord, she learned of Darth Sidious's plan, of his imminent reveal, and of the final, devastating blow he intended to strike against the Jedi Order. But there was no time to process this horrifying revelation, for in that instant, Order 66 was executed. It was a moment of unspeakable horror. The men she had fought alongside, the soldiers she had come to see as brothers, were suddenly transformed into ruthless, cold-blooded assassins. Their familiar, trustworthy faces now filled with a chilling, single-minded purpose. Ahsoka was faced with an impossible dilemma: to kill them in self-defense, or to find a way to escape without harming the very men she had fought to protect. In an act that diverged sharply from any traditional Jedi teaching, she chose the latter. She went to incredible lengths to save her old friend Captain Rex, a man she knew was her brother at his core, but whose mind was now enslaved by a chip. In this moment, her Jedi past and her personal moral compass collided, as she chose a path of compassion over destruction. Witnessing the fall of the Republic and the destruction of the Jedi Order took a profound emotional toll. As she watched hollow footage of Master Windu's death, saw the Jedi Temple burn, and heard the reports of Jedi being hunted down and slaughtered, a new layer of betrayal settled in. This was no longer just the Council's betrayal of her. It was the betrayal of an entire galaxy. The Republic she had fought for, the ideals she had bled for, and the friends she had lost in the name of a righteous war were all exposed as a grand, tragic illusion. The most devastating blow came when she finally grasped the horrific truth about Anakin. The trail he left behind, a path of slaughter and destruction leading back to the Jedi Temple, confirmed what Maul had cryptically foretold. The man who had been her mentor, the person she had trusted most in the galaxy, had fallen to the dark side. This painful reality was more destructive than any physical wound. In the snows of Mandalore, she and Rex buried the fallen clone troopers. As a final act of grieving, they left 2 lightsabers as a marker, her own blue blade and Maul's red one. This was a symbolic burial. She was not just mourning the dead, she was laying to rest the end of the Clone Wars, the fall of the Republic, and her own former identity. In the fallout of Order 66, Ahsoka made the defining decision of her life: she would go into hiding. She discarded the Jedi Order entirely, abandoning her lightsabers and her formal identity. She chose to operate in the shadows, to help those in need, no longer as a Jedi, but simply as a compassionate being, guided by her own principles. Her allegiance was no longer to an organization, but to her own moral code. She understood that the true light didn't require a sacred order to bestow it. It resided within the hearts of individuals. By choosing quiet defiance over blind allegiance to a collapsed order, Ahsoka Tano truly became a hero beyond the Jedi, beyond the Republic, and beyond any single title. Her legend, at long last, had truly begun.